Have you ever wondered if God can speak directly to you, not through external signals, but through your own mind? Imagine an old radio, the kind that requires fine-tuning on the dial to pick up the right frequency. A man, in total silence, slowly turned the knob trying to tune in to a forgotten station. But instead of music, what he began to hear were ideas, not voices, not noises, but deep inspirations, revelations that seemed to come from somewhere beyond himself. Was it just the mind at work, or was it God communicating? This story, as enigmatic as it may seem, is not unique. Thousands report similar experiences, moments of absolute clarity, insights during crises, decisions made with a conviction that seemed to come from above. And the question that echoes is, can our brain, this biological machine of billions of neurons, be the channel through which God speaks to us? The answer is surprising. Yes, and science, together with spirituality, can show us how this is possible. For a long time, it was believed that the brain was something fixed, unchangeable after childhood. But today we know that this is not true. The concept of neuroplasticity has revolutionized the way we see the human mind. It has been discovered that the brain is constantly changing, reorganizing connections, creating new pathways, healing emotional wounds, and adapting to each experience. What if this potential for change, this infinite malleability, is precisely how God works within us? If the mind is moldable, then it can be tuned, like that radio, to pick up the subtlest messages from the spiritual universe. And maybe, just maybe, the divine is not outside, but inside every thought that moves us. When we look at the human brain through the lens of modern science, what we see is more than a biological structure. We see a living, pulsating architecture that changes all the time. Every thought, every emotion, every experience leaves an invisible mark, shaping the paths along which our ideas travel. We call this neuroplasticity, and it is one of the greatest discoveries of neuroscience in recent times. But what if this capacity for change is not just a physical phenomenon, but a divine signature embedded in our very biology? Think about it. If God really did create human beings in his image, as so many spiritual traditions affirm, then the brain, with all its complexity and potential for transformation, could be a direct reflection of God's character. A God who is movement, change, growth. A God who gives second chances, who turns pain into learning, a fall into rebirth. Neuroplasticity would then be the neurological mirror of grace, the ability to reinvent oneself, even after failing. Even more fascinating is how this concept connects with deeper spiritual experiences. When someone undergoes a spiritual awakening, they are not just changing their beliefs, they are literally creating new neural pathways, reprogramming the brain to interpret the world in a whole new way. It's as if faith had a biological code, activating parts of the brain linked to compassion, empathy, and a sense of purpose. Science shows that meditation, prayer, and spiritual contemplation activate specific areas of the brain associated with tranquility, focus, and emotional connection. This means that spirituality not only affects the soul, but also the brain, strengthening connections and even generating new brain cells. It's as if, by seeking God, we are at the same time recreating our own mind. Deep down, perhaps God has always spoken to us, but only now, with science as an ally, are we beginning to understand how he does it. And it all starts inside our mind. Imagine that your mind is a garden. With every thought you cultivate, a seed is planted. Words, memories, attitudes, all these daily choices are like water, light, or shadow. Some seeds blossom into wisdom and peace. Others, without proper care, grow like weeds and suffocate what is most beautiful in you. But here's the essential point. You are the gardener. The choices we make don't just affect our spiritual paths, they literally shape our brains. Science calls this the repetition principle. The more we repeat a behavior, the stronger that neural pathway becomes. It's like a trail in the forest. The more you use it, the more obvious and accessible it becomes. If you choose forgiveness over and over again, this path gets stronger. If you insist on anger, it becomes the automatic path. Now look at this from the perspective of faith. Didn't God give us this brain structure precisely so that we could be co-authors of our own transformation? The Bible, Proverbs, and countless spiritual traditions repeat this principle for thousands of years. He who walks with the wise will be wise. Do not associate with the angry. Blessed are those who sow with tears, for they will reap with joy. These passages are not just ethical advice. They are spiritual codes that reflect a neurological reality, the environment we live in, the people we live with, the decisions we make. All of this acts as a stimulus, silently reprogramming the structure of our brain. And here's the fascinating thing. Spirituality invites us to choose intentionally, to choose good, even when evil seems easier, to choose silence, even when shouting seems fairer, to choose to love, even when we have reason to hate. Each of these choices not only shapes character, they transform the mind, creating new neural networks that reflect the ways of the divine. Free will, then, is not just a spiritual gift. It is a biological resource divinely designed to bring us closer to or further away from the essence of God. And with each choice, a new path is formed. The question is, which path are you strengthening today? At some point in our lives, we've all felt the weight or power of a word. A simple, "I love you," can heal a wounded soul. A "you'll never make it" can echo for years, shaping insecurities that shouldn't even exist. What you may not know is that every word you hear, say, or even think activates circuits within your brain, and these circuits, when repeated, rewrite who you are. But what does this have to do with God? Absolutely everything. In John 1:1 it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." The word here is not just language, it is creation, it is divine essence. The words that come out of our mouths carry this same creative principle. They build invisible bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds. When we speak with love, we generate empathy. When we choose compassion, we produce peace. But when we use words with rancor, criticism, or contempt, we break these bridges with ourselves, with others, and with the divine. Neuroscience has shown that positive words activate areas of the brain linked to hope, creativity, and pleasure. Meanwhile, negative words stimulate fear, stress, and self-protection. Every time you say, "I'm not good enough," your brain believes it and reinforces that pattern. But when you say, "I can improve," "I am loved," "I am learning," the architecture of your brain begins to change to reflect this truth. Words are programming commands for the brain. Now think, if God created the world with the word, hasn't He given us that same power on a smaller scale? The power to shape the internal and external world with what we say? What if every time we used words of faith, encouragement, and gratitude, we were tuning in to the frequency of heaven? What you say matters, not just for the listener, but for your own spirit. Words are seeds, and each one has the potential to bring you closer to God or to silence His voice within you. Imagine a perfectly calibrated radio with the antenna in place, the buttons in the right spot. But if there is interference in the environment, the sound still comes out distorted. So it is with the human mind. Even with a structure capable of receiving divine inspiration, if the heart is in turmoil, the message is lost in the noise. The heart here is not just the symbol of emotions. It is, according to neuroscience, one of the most powerful centers of influence on the brain, and spiritually, it is the filter that defines how clear your connection with God will be. Human emotions, love, anger, guilt, joy, gratitude, are not just reactions, they are signals that trigger a cascade of chemical, neurological, and spiritual reactions. The limbic system, the region of the brain responsible for emotions, is directly linked to our ability to focus, decide, and even understand abstract messages. In other words, when you are emotionally disturbed, your brain goes into defensive mode, and the ability to perceive the subtle, the divine, the transcendent is drastically reduced. Faith, on the other hand, requires surrender. And surrender requires a heart at peace. A heart full of hurt, envy, or fear acts like a dirty filter, distorting everything that passes through it. But when there is forgiveness, love, and humility, the filter clears. Spiritual attunement becomes clearer. God's voice, previously muffled, begins to be perceived between the lines of life, in an unexpected silence, in a simple phrase, in a feeling that calms. Psalm 19:14 says, "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord." That's not just a poetic prayer, it's an alignment, words and heart, mind and emotion. Accessing divine wisdom requires this inner harmony. A heart in balance allows the mind to pick up higher frequencies. It's like adjusting an internal compass that always points to spiritual north. If you want to hear God, start not only by tuning your mind, but also by calming your heart. Because sometimes God's voice doesn't shout, it whispers, and only those who are silent inside can hear it. Have you ever tried to open a door with all your might and it just won't budge? Sometimes it seems that life blocks our paths of purpose. A project that doesn't go ahead, a relationship that doesn't fit, a prayer that doesn't get answered. But what if this blockage is actually a sacred redirection? What if, instead of saying no, God was saying, "This way is better"? In neuroscience, this is called the law of deviation. When the brain encounters an obstacle that seems insurmountable, it activates alternative circuits. Instead of giving up, it looks for new routes, new ideas, new behaviors, new solutions. This not only keeps the brain active, but stimulates it to grow. In spiritual terms, this mechanism becomes a powerful metaphor. When a dream doesn't come true, it may be because there is another one that is more aligned with your greater purpose. Human history is full of these divine detours. Moses only wanted to free his people, but God led him through the desert for 40 years before he reached the promised land. Joseph was sold by his own brothers, unjustly imprisoned, forgotten for years, only to be elevated to governor of Egypt and save millions from starvation. Each detour seemed like a failure until, in the end, it turned out to be part of a much bigger plan. And the same thing happens in our brains. When we experience loss, rejection, or breakups, there is an invisible reconfiguration taking place. The pain forces the brain to create new connections, new worldviews, new meanings. And that's when God's voice often becomes clearer, not on the expected path, but on the alternative one. When everything seems at a standstill, perhaps God is just taking us off a narrow road to put us on a wider avenue. The secret lies in trusting the detours, because they are not flaws in the plan, they are the plan. So the next time a door slams shut, stop, breathe, and ask, what other door is heaven trying to show me? For centuries, science and faith have been at loggerheads. On one side, the microscope; on the other, the scriptures; on one side, neurons; on the other, miracles. But what if this division is just an illusion? What if, in fact, these two worlds are dancing together all the time, each revealing pieces of the same mystery? Perhaps science and faith are not rivals, but two different languages trying to describe the same truth. God speaks to us, and the brain is one of the channels He has chosen. Think of all that neuroscience has shown us so far. The mind is malleable, capable of healing, learning, and transforming itself. The environment, words, emotions, choices, everything influences the brain just as it influences the soul. Prayer reduces stress. Gratitude increases serotonin levels. Forgiveness activates areas of the brain linked to well-being. Each spiritual practice, seen through the eyes of science, turns out to be a precise biological stimulus, a divine technology inserted within us. But it is when we look through the eyes of faith that we understand the purpose of all this. It's not just about mental well-being, it's about spiritual alignment, it's about attuning mind and heart to something greater. When science and faith come together, understanding deepens. Neuroplasticity is no longer just a brain phenomenon. It becomes evidence of grace. Meditation isn't just focus, it's listening. Emotion isn't just chemistry, it's sensitivity to grasp the invisible. And at this point, everything connects. The brain, with its plastic structure, the heart, with its emotional sensitivity, words, with their creative power, the closed paths, with their revealing detours. All these pieces form a single picture, a God who is always speaking. And a human being who is learning to listen. Perhaps the greatest proof that God speaks to you is precisely the fact that right now, at this very moment, you are here, reflecting on it. The channel is already open. The question now is, are you listening? You don't need supernatural signs, lightning in the sky, or voices in the wind to know that God is trying to speak to you. Divine communication can be much simpler and much closer than you think. It's in your thoughts, in your decisions, in the sensations you can't explain, in the silent promptings that come out of nowhere. It's not coincidence, it's intention. And perhaps what you call intuition is actually instruction. The truth is that your brain is designed to perceive, interpret, and react to the world around you, but also to grasp what is beyond the visible. Neuroscience has shown that it is adaptable, intelligent, sensitive, and capable of reprogramming itself based on what you experience. But what if all this has a much greater purpose than just keeping you functional? What if your brain was created not just to think, but to listen to the Creator? Every choice you make, every emotion you feel, every word you release, every person you connect with, all of this is tuning your mind to a type of frequency. And depending on what you allow into your life, you move closer or further away from that tuning. So the final message is simple. Stop looking for God only outside. Start looking within. Adjust your routine. Change what you consume. Pay attention to the thoughts that repeat themselves. Train your mind as if it were an antenna. The cleaner it is, the stronger the signal. And when you tune in, you'll realize they're not distant voices. It's as if someone has been talking to you all along, and you're finally listening. Do you want to know if God still speaks to people? He does, all the time. The problem is that most people's minds are so busy that they don't even notice. Now it's up to you. If this content made sense to you, don't stop here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. Now watch this next video, where I show you another essential step to change your reality.